Hello from the Center for Computational and Structural Biology at Scripps Research. This is a quick start guide for our program, cellPAINT 2D. cellPAINT is a program for creating dynamic illustrations of the molecular structure of living cells. With cellPAINT, you build illustrations by drawing membranes, adding membrane-bound proteins, and by adding soluble proteins and nucleic acids. cellPAINT can be downloaded as a standalone version or used as a web app at our website linked in the description below. Once you launch the application, you will find two bars to the left and right of the window. The left-hand bar contains the ingredients you can paint with, and the right-hand bar contains the tools you can use to manipulate the scenes you create. The space in the middle is your canvas where you can create scenes. When you select a tool, the settings for the tool are available on the left. Options for managing files, help, information about molecules, and for creating new ingredients are included in menus at the top. To get us started, we will create a sample scene using a basic workflow. To start out our tutorial, we're going to navigate to our latest coronavirus recipe. I'm going to select the membrane, and then I'm going to draw it in the direction that the arrow says to draw it, which is clockwise. When you get to a position where you're close to where you started drawing, you can let go and it will close into a closed membrane. Here I navigated to the coronavirus spike, and I tried to draw it outside the membrane. Since it's a membrane-bound protein, it will not draw unless you're over the membrane and click the left-hand mouse button. So I'm just drawing a bunch of them here. And then I'm going to draw the envelope protein. Some matrix protein. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And now I'm going to draw a fibrous nucleocapsid with RNA. You'll notice that when you draw a fiber, it goes up and down through the layers and gets darker and lighter. This is to maintain an illusion that it's three-dimensional. Once you're happy with your fiber, you can just let up the mouse button. You can get close and make a closed chain to where you started, but in this instance, we're not doing that. Here, I just navigated to our blood plasma recipe, and I'm just drawing some antibodies. I imagine you'll want those surrounding the coronavirus. Here, I am manipulating the temperature dial. I'm going all the way up, and that will start the diffusion. Sometimes you'll put something somewhere and you won't like its position or just want to move it around. To do this, you can use the drag tool. Sometimes I really like to drag around the membrane-bound proteins to randomize them. Okay, when you use your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out. If you want to zoom into a specific spot, you have to highlight that protein, click it, and then the zoom will take you exactly there. To translate the scene, you can use your right mouse button, click down, and then move the mouse, and you will move accordingly. You can also tilt the scene, which really helps if you're drawing. To do this, you use the mouse wheel, but click down and then move the mouse. This is the scale bar you can use to see how big things are or how far things are apart. You can also use a tool called Measure. To use this tool, you select it, and then you select a position on the screen, hold down and drag it, find your position and let up, and it will tell you how far it is apart. Here I'm manipulating the background color, so you can choose any color you want. I prefer the darker colors or the lighter colors, but any color in the rainbow. If you want to change a color of an ingredient, in the upper menu there's a little magnifying glass, and you click your protein and it'll pop up with a name, description, and an HSV slider, and you can change the color. I am happy with that. To take a picture, you go to the upper menu and you click on the camera button. A pop-up will come up and you can save your file in any folder with any name. It saves a PNG. To save the actual file where you can load it in and still manipulate the proteins, click on the disk icon. You will get another pop-up for a file browser, and you can name your file and save it. Okay, I'm going to show you how you can use some of our advanced features to spray your ingredients into the scene. In the lower left-hand corner, there is a window. You can set the number of instances and the radius of the mouse. As you see, when you do this, you get a spray effect, and you can populate your scenes a lot faster. I like to do this with the smaller ingredients, and then I'll come in and draw the bigger ingredients in after, or you could have done that before too. I'm going to delete the scene, and now I'm going to use the grouping tool to show you how you can do something similar. I'm going to do a small subset of the soluble ingredients that I want to place in my scene. I'm going to draw them in a little circle. Now I'm going to use diffusion to randomize them just a little bit. And then I'm going to go to my grouping tool. I'm going to shift select all the proteins that I just drew. And then I'm going to type in a name for the group, cell mix. And I'm going to hit create group. When I do this, I actually get the mix that I made, and I can paint with it. So if you have a repeated element in your scene, this makes it really easy to draw with it. You can also use diffusion to randomize that a bit so it doesn't look so regular. Okay, now we're going to go through some of the more advanced features in order to make a larger scene. Right now I'm going to draw a small coronavirus to use as a repeated element in our scene. We are going to draw it much like we did before, with some spikes, matrix, and envelope. Right now I'm just randomizing the positions. I'm going to use the grouping tool again, and then I'm going to lock it into position. Using the grouping tool, I'm going to shift select everything, being careful not to miss the membrane. Now I'm going to create the group. We can draw with it now, but be careful not to hold down and spray a bunch of viruses, as your computer will probably slow down. You'll notice here a pop-up because I have so much in the scene that the program detected performance issues. To fix it, we just have to find the cause. In this case, it's the diffusion. To rectify it, I'll just turn the diffusion down to 0 and then turn the physics back on. Now, as this is going to be a part of a larger illustration, I'm going to randomize the positions of some of the proteins in each virus. I'm going to use the drag tool to do this. Because physics and diffusion are an integral part of cellPAINT's performance, we needed to create a tool to freeze sections of the painting so that you can create larger and larger scenes without worrying about running into performance issues. Okay, you will notice that I just selected the lock icon in the right-hand toolbar. I'm hovering over the virus, selecting them and clicking Lock Selection. You can also hit Enter and it will do the same thing. You'll notice once I do this, a convex hull is created around the virus. This is what the physics will see from now on. You can also unfreeze it and go back to single ingredients. Now I'm going to create a cellular membrane for our illustration. I want to maintain this specific shape, so once I draw it, I'm going to use the pin tool and pin all of the peaks and valleys in place. Now I'm going to demonstrate the Pin To tool. I'm going to draw a bunch of ribosomes and sections of RNA, then I'm going to pin them together. I'm selecting the end of the RNA strand with the Pin To tool, and I'm pinning it to the ribosome. I will do this for each repeated element. Like before, I'm going to draw the basic soluble proteins of my recipe and make a brush out of them. Then I'm going to use that brush with the grouping tool to draw the proteins into the scene faster. Now I'm going to turn diffusion on and let Brownian motion fill in the holes for me. Now if you're happy with what you drew, you can go ahead and lock that selection as well. Obviously, I could probably make this look a little better, but in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it as is. Now I'm going to draw in some antibodies around the coronavirus, and then I'm going to call it good. In cellPAINT, we've included a background image loader where you can load your own EM images or even images from the program itself. To load an image, you click on the File folder icon at the top of the window. A pop-up will appear, and you can select from your own files. Once the image is loaded, you can see it in the background of the painting area. You can modify the pixel angstrom ratio if you know it, image opacity, rotation, layer. You can set the image on top, you can use an interactive mode, and you can show the cellPAINT scale bar. If you are using your own EM image, it would be good to line up the scale bar on the image with the cellPAINT scale bar and make sure everything lines up. When you're in interactive mode, you can load multiple images, you can move around each of the images in the drawing area. Now I'm going to draw on top of our background image. Lovely. If you want to trace things in the scene, sometimes it's helpful to put the background image on the top and modify the image opacity. That way you can see both at the same time. You can also delete the background image if you don't want to use it anymore or you're done using it. One of the most requested features of the original cellPAINT was to load custom ingredients. To do so, open the app, go to the top bar, and click the plus icon. Here you will see a PDB ID entry field. Enter your favorite PDB ID. Here I'm entering 1AON, and then I'm clicking Illustrate. Since this is a server-based service, sometimes the server connection goes awry. No worries, usually it's just a bad connection and you can click Illustrate again and it will fix it. With larger complexes, it can take a long time for the server to send back an image. Now that I have an image, I can check that it's soluble and create the ingredient. The ingredient will show up in your ingredients palette. From here, I can paint with it. It diffuses like the other soluble ingredients diffuse based on size. You can drag it like the other ingredients. And you can use the magnifying glass to color it. Now I'm going to return to the ingredient creation to create a fiber ingredient. I'm choosing a PDB that has a full turn of DNA in it. Now I click the fiber toggle, and I can rotate it so it's all the way horizontal. Once I'm happy with that, I can drag the fiber length slider in order to show where the repeats should start. You can tweak the rotation and the fiber length until you're happy with the way your fiber looks. Once you are, you can choose a name. I'm going to choose DNA in this case, and then you can click Create Ingredient. Again, the fiber ingredients you create will behave like the other fiber ingredients that are pre-built into the program. Now, since we're going to create a transmembrane protein, I'm going to draw a membrane. Poof! I'm choosing a PDB ID for an ATP synthase. It's a large complex, so you'll have to wait a little bit once you hit Illustrate. There we go. In order to line the protein up with the transmembrane domain, I have to rotate it until it's vertical. Now I'll set the offset to move the membrane to where I know the transmembrane domain is. Once I'm happy with that, I can change the name and click Create Ingredient. The ingredient shows up in the ingredient palette, and I can paint it just like I can paint any other transmembrane protein. If you have the need to create multiple ingredients for a large recipe, it's a good idea to head over to Mesoscope at our website, which I will link in the description below, in order to create these ingredients based on a spreadsheet format. In that way, you can create ingredients in a batch format and then load them into the program all at once.